So whilst everyone in the football world, when it comes to Celtic obviously, talks about the big deal of the talking at the moment is obviously the Jota deal, but there has been an announcement and it's probably a bigger deal to Celtic fans. Hamish from Hail 67 is leaving Scotland and Celtic behind as he heads off to Melbourne to start a new career. He put out on his Twitter, it'll be fitting on the day that Marco Tilo switched from Melbourne to Scotland. I announced that I'll be heading the other way in just over a month. I'll be sad to leave Scotland and Celtic. A lot of people will be sad to see you go, and I wish you all the best for the future. It's one thing, you can take yourself away from Scotland and you can take yourself away from Celtic, but it never leaves you. It never leaves you. If anything, that makes you even more and more determined to stay involved with everything Celtic. So I wish you all the best for the future, Hamish. Right, let's get down to the talking point of the day. And it has to be the Jota story. And then everyone and their horse is now getting in on the bandwagon and saying, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing for him? Look at it this way, he's still in his early 20s. He goes down there and he plays for 2 seasons. He pockets £20 million in cash. He plays with the likes of Ronaldo, who's coming to the end of his career. He plays with a couple other people that are coming to the end of their career. But the information that he can get from those type of players, it then comes back to, I'm going to say he's going to come back to a big Spanish club. I think when he's played with those players and they will put him on a pedestal even more, he'll end up in the likes of Barcelona or Real Madrid or something like that. You never know. But on the other side of it, for the next 2 seasons, he's not going to be playing Champions League. He's not going to be playing and pushing himself at that higher level in Europe. And that's why Chris Sutton's had a blast at him, and John Hartson's also been speaking, and we'll talk about that in a second. So, but I mean, it's a sad fact that we are losing him, but we're pocketing about £19 million profit. And at 24-year-old, you know, he can come back. He can go down there for 2 seasons, and when you look at it now, it's getting more and more that players see a cycle of 2 seasons. Do the whole Jota thing there, you see that? And if he goes down there, he plays for 2 seasons, he pockets 20 million. He's then got probably the pick of the clubs in Europe that he can come back to. Will he end up in England? I maybe don't think he will end up in England, but he will end up probably back at Portugal at a big club. He could end up, I think he will end up back in Spain. It's just my thinking behind it. I think he will end up in Spain in about 2 or 3 years' time. But who in their right mind could really turn down £10 million a year? Although Chris Sutton has said that he's basically sold his soul for money, and I think we would all sell our soul for money. If somebody comes along and offers me some crazy amount of money to leave here, and well, you know, it's all about the lifestyle. He is going to be playing with some of the top players of the world, even though they are coming at the end of their careers. So we move on from that. We move on from Chris Sutton. St Mirren boss, the St Mirren boss, Stephen Robinson, he's getting a bit worried about the fact that Brendan Rodgers, Celtic will only get better with Brendan Rodgers back at the helm. He says that Celtic will be even more dangerous this season that the 50-year-old is back. He says the Buddies ended Celtic's 364 unbeaten run in the Premiership when they beat us last September. The Paisley side obviously went on to finish 6th. But he says Rodgers won 7 domestic trophies in a row in his first Celtic between 2016 and 2019. That domestic season where they won everything, you know, and it was very unlikely that we were going to lose anything that season. He says it's going to be a real challenge. He says Ange took them to another level, but Brendan, who's beaten me in 2 cup finals, says I don't know whether I'd welcome him back or not. I dropped him a text. He's a top class manager, and he proved before. Unfortunately for everyone else in the league, in the Scottish SPFL, Celtic will now just get better and better under Brendan Rodgers. Teams like St Mirren are obviously consistently swimming against the tide when it comes to Celtic. He says there's a huge gulf in class. He said we have to try and bridge that gap, but everyone in the top 6, other than Rangers last season spent a lot of money. Does that make Michael Beale a lucky man? It basically goes on to say that, you know, it is going to be unbelievable to see what happens at Celtic over the next season. And talking about Celtic and everything Celtic, I mean, we're sitting with this war chest of cash now. We can actually say that. If you look, it was suggested that we're going to have 30 million to spend this season, this close season. Has that just been boosted by another 10-15 million for the Jota deal? I think Jota leaving the building, it's a fantastic piece of business for Celtic. Let's not, we're all disappointed. We are all disappointed. And I think I would have loved to seen, you've got to remember that goal, the free kick that Jota scored against Real Madrid. I think everyone wanted to see Jota at that level, trying himself at that level. Everyone probably expected him to maybe do another year at Celtic and then go down to the English Premiership. That's where your smart money was. Everyone thought it might follow Ange Postecoglou out the door. You have to also ask the question. This has to be asked. Celtic fans will be talking about this. And I'm saying, Celtic must have known. This doesn't just come out of nowhere. Celtic would have known before the end of last season. You know, you don't get to the end of the season, you don't finish. And we talk about when Jota says on his Instagram on the 5th of June, when he said the class of 22-23 has graduated. Now when you graduate, you leave, you move on. It's like you leave, I mean, my nephew's just graduated from primary school to high school. You leave, you move on. He did give us, so they knew, Celtic would have known this was happening. Maybe this is why the talks with Brendan Rodgers took so long, took the best part of a week, because he'd been actually wanting to find out what players were leaving, which players were going out the door, how much money he would have had to spend this summer, what are the options with the players that, you know, that the team out there have been looking at. We've brought in 2 players so far. They're not probably at the level that Jota was, but it is what it is. We're going to have to spend, we're going to have to bring in 3 or 4 players to appease the fans now. We're going to have to bring in at least 3 or 4 players at around about between the 6 and 10 million pound bracket. And that is the only way that the board will be forgiven for what's happened this summer. Will we do that? Tell me in the comments. Do you think that we'll spend £10 million on a player this summer? We've done it before. We brought in Edward for £9 million. I think that it will be the case that we will spend big. But my only worry is we get closer and closer to the end of the transfer window before we start. I think we've been used to the last 2 seasons where we've had our transfer business done before the players start pre-season. They start pre-season this week, next week. So it is going to be interesting over the next week. Once the big deal, that I think there's probably still another one big Celtic player to maybe be sold. You know, we don't know. I think there still will be at least one major first team player to be sold. I mean, we did lose Aaron Moy. He retired due to his back problems. His wife actually did comment about that and say it's hard on players. You know, he's had such a regimented life. He's had strict diets, training so hard, she says, that you can't breathe properly. So he's obviously had that back issue. It was obviously the reason that he missed out the last couple of games of the season, and including the cup final. And she's just happy now that they can spend time as a family. You know, he's missed out. And you have to remember that as well. When you're going away with the Champions League, when you're going away with your national country, you miss out a lot of things that when you are working away. I mean, he was down in China and his family were still back in Scotland. You miss out a lot of things on your kids. And when you get to a certain stage of your life, and all the young team that watch this will be like, you know, but when you get to a certain age and you start missing out things in your kids, that's when it starts to hit home. And I'm sure that he'll go on to have a fantastic career, Aaron Moy, whatever he does. And it's the same with Hamish. I'm sure Hamish, when he goes from Hail Hail 67, he is going to still be involved in Hail Hail 67. He'll have a fantastic career down under in Australia. And it just shows you, us Celtic fans are everywhere. We are a completely global brand. And on that note, have a great Saturday and enjoy your day, Celtic fans all around the world.